There are times when industries like people seem to be driving full speed towards a cliff, fully aware of the danger, but somehow too committed to turn back. And right now, that's exactly how the UK construction industry feels with the looming end of grandfather rights for CSCS cards. At the end of 2024, the clock will run out for thousands of seasoned professionals, veterans of the construction trade, who've built their careers on experience rather than formal education and formal qualifications. These are the people who've been working with their hands, putting in the hours, and passing down practical knowledge long before the construction industry decided that only certain qualifications should count. But as things stand, come December the 31st, anyone relying on those grandfather rights will either need to have an NVQ or another approved qualification, or they'll potentially be barred from site access. Now, don't get me wrong, I get the intent. Creating a fully qualified workforce is a noble goal. The Construction Leadership Council, or the CLC, put this vision forward back in 2015. And in outline terms, it makes sense, especially given the need and the drive to improve safety and accountability. In an ideal world, having every worker qualified, assessed, and fully certified is a great vision. But in practice, this transition is far from simple, and it might actually prove to be more damaging than beneficial, especially right now. So for starters, let's talk about timing. The industry is in the midst of a historic skill shortage, and it's hitting us from all sides. The combined fallout of Brexit and the pandemic left us down tens of thousands of workers. Many of our skilled labourers, especially those who came from the EU, opted not to return after Brexit. And although construction was granted key worker status during the pandemic, let's be honest, those 2 years were hardly business as usual. Projects slowed, recruitment was next to impossible, and training opportunities shriveled. So while we're now largely back to normal, the effects of those lost years are still being felt across the industry. Yet despite those unprecedented challenges, here we are, staring down the barrel of a policy that will force thousands of skilled, experienced workers to either pay for an NVQ assessment or be pushed out of the workforce. And it's not as simple as signing up for a quick course. While some might think that an NVQ is straightforward to obtain, the reality is that it involves a time-consuming, sometimes costly process that not all workers, especially older ones, are willing or able to go through. For many of these professionals, proving their skills after years, sometimes decades of reliable work, feels like an insult. It's like asking a master builder to prove he knows how to use a hammer. For some, the frustration and indignity are enough to make them consider early retirement rather than jump through these arbitrary hoops. We're hearing this frustration from across the industry. Some see it as a cash grab, a way to squeeze money out of workers who've already contributed plenty. And while CSCS and the Construction Industry Training Board, or the CITB, do offer some financial assistance, it doesn't change the fact that the process is, for many, unnecessary and burdensome. We're risking a brain drain of experienced talent because of bureaucratic red tape that feels weirdly out of touch with reality. It's worth noting that IA cardholders make up a significant portion of the workforce. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are the individuals that know the ins and outs of site work, who understand the challenges, and who train up the next generation. Their experience is something that no qualification can replace. And if they walk away, if we lose them because of our inflexible deadline, we're all going to feel that loss, whether it's in delays, mistakes, or simply a loss of the kind of quality you only get from years on the job. And let's talk about the pragmatics here. If these cardholders exit, we're not exactly in a position to replace them overnight. The construction industry is grappling with a shortage that goes way beyond cardholders. It's systemic, and removing these experienced workers only worsens it. If we proceed with the current plan, we could be crippling ourselves at a time when we could least afford it. So what are the alternatives? Is there room for a more balanced approach? Some have suggested delaying the deadline, giving everyone a little bit of breathing room. Let's face it, many industries received extensions and exceptions during the pandemic, acknowledging that plans made pre-COVID didn't really count after a global shutdown. The original call to phase out grandfather rights was made in March 2019, almost a full year before the world was turned upside down. Extending the deadline would surely allow workers time to qualify at a realistic pace and help the industry stabilise. Another approach would be to formally recognise on-the-job experience. Instead of a rigid qualification system, why not create an assessment that validates practical, hands-on experience? This kind of flexibility would acknowledge the value of years spent in the trade, giving veteran workers the respect they've earned. We could also ramp up support for older workers, offering tailored on-site assessment options that don't require them to stop everything and go back to school. The fact is that not everyone fits neatly into a standardized qualification box, and that's okay. So here's where we are. A fully qualified workforce is a good aim, but the cost of achieving it through this hardline policy might be too high. We have to ask ourselves if this is really the best way to get there. Are we willing to push some of our best workers off the cliff just to tick a box on qualification? Maybe it's time we stop, take a breath, and look at the bigger picture. When I was thinking about this, I can't help but think that this is like the ending of Thelma and Louise. We're racing towards the edge, foot flat down on the gas, knowing the cliff is right there. But there's still time to hit the brakes, or better yet, take a different road altogether. This doesn't have to be the end of the line for experienced, competent workers. There's still time to apply some common sense, some compassion, and to make sure we don't lose invaluable skills for the sake of an arbitrary deadline. Because once we drive off that edge, there's no coming back. And that's a risk we just can't afford to take now more than ever.